just east of San Diego, California, about 75 miles tucked away in the remote areas of the Anza Borrego State Park. Towering high above the rugged Carrizo Gorge stands the world's largest all-wood trestle bridge, known as the Goat Canyon Trestle. At 633 feet in length and 186 feet high, built with a 14-degree curve to withstand the high winds that whip through the Carrizo Gorge, the bridge is still completely intact after almost 100 years from its original construction, an engineering feat no less. This journey started out the day before when I jumped on my bike and I headed south to the California-Mexico border and out to a small town called Jacumba, which is where I stayed at a small resort called DeAnza Springs Resort, and is a great location to stay if you're looking to come in the night before, which is what I did in this case, or if you're arriving early morning and hitting the trail to do this hike, you can still pay a small fee and park your vehicle at DeAnza Springs Resort. It's situated right next to the trailhead that leads onto the railroad tracks, this portion of the desert line that's been abandoned, and will take you right out to the Goat Canyon Bridge. The trailhead can be picked up from the DeAnza Springs Resort. From there, you'll crest a small hill and see the first set of abandoned rail cars. You can drop down to the trail that parallels the abandoned railroad tracks of the San Diego and Arizona Eastern Railway and make the 8-mile journey out to the Goat Canyon Trestle Bridge. The hike is fairly flat as it parallels the tracks, with a few areas of elevation changes as you go around two particular tunnels that are blocked off. If you stick around to the end of the video, I'll offer some additional tips and just suggestions if you're planning to do this hike. But what you'll find is that you're going to cross a number of different smaller bridges, mostly wooden bridges, as well as going through a series of different tunnels before you finally reach the Goat Canyon Trestle Bridge. So this Goat Canyon Trestle Bridge, you can Google it, you'll find it on the maps. That is our destination, and it is part of a section of the San Diego, Arizona railway system. It was built back in the early 1900s. There are actually some good books out there on it. And this section of the railway system, which actually connected San Diego to Arizona back in the day, this particular section is called the Desert Line section. And I think it's around 71 miles of track. The original owner, Pacific Railway, went bankrupt, and they sold this, or Baja Railway Company, which is still operating today, purchased this and are operating portions of this San Diego, Arizona Railway. But this portion is not operating, and there were rumblings, and still actually on the Baja Railway website, if you go to their website, about them putting this section of railway back into service, which means going out here and hiking to see these bridges, like what I'm doing and others have done, you won't be able to do it. So we've had 5 of these bridges thus far, and we are just about an hour into this hike. I'm guessing, you can see a tunnel entrance way out there. I'm guessing at least 3.5 hours to do this one way, based on how slow we have to go going around some of these tunnels that are closed off. That's crazy. That one's
So there's two of them over there. Two tunnel entrances. It's amazing. You can walk 10 minutes outside the back of a resort that's right next to the 8 freeway, one of the biggest freeways in California. And within an hour, you are just completely out here in isolation and completely nobody else around. And here we go. This is the second set of abandoned rail cars we saw back there at the very beginning, literally over the hill from DeAnza Springs Resort. But look at this.
These Canadian passenger rail cars are a bit of a mystery. Upon first coming up on these, you just would initially think these were cars that were used back in the day and have been abandoned. But they're actually newer cars, even though they've been vandalized beyond recognition. These cars were never used on this section of the track as passenger rail cars, but rather they were being transported to their new owner across this portion of the desert line, and for whatever reason never made it to the final destination and found their resting place here in this portion of the track. A little Google detective work reveals a lot about these cars. They were cars that came out of Montreal. They were planned to be used in a project in Tacoma, Washington, and eventually were sold to the San Diego and Imperial Valley Railroad. And they were to be used for a commuter service between Tecate and Tijuana. Probably the biggest mystery around these cars is why they were abandoned in this location and they never made it to the San Diego and Imperial Valley Railroad. The other thing to notice on this in these photos is the hillside behind the cars. As you approach the cars, you'll get a good view of this hillside, and it clearly shows a partial landslide occurred at some point in the last 10 years. It may only be a matter of time before these cars are pushed into the Carrizo Gorge down below by a future landslide. I guess if you got stuck out here, stuck in a storm or something, there's your shelter right there. Well, here comes another tunnel. This one may be the long way around tunnel. I'm not sure because I see the path there. All right, so this is the second tunnel we have to go around, and this is the longer one. And that is what we're seeing over here on the left. Which kind of sucks, but it's about 3/4 of a mile around this ridge line and back around to the other side of this. So I'm going to turn the camera off here and focus on where I'm stepping. You can see another tunnel over there. That one's open. So we're doing a bypass around the second tunnel, and this is, we're a little less than 2 hours in, probably an hour 45 into this hike at this point. So you can see this bypass still goes all the way around that ridge, it looks like. So that tunnel that cuts through the mountain here, that has to be a pretty long tunnel. Pretty impressive. Too bad it's not open. Still on the bypass portion of the trail around that second tunnel that was blocked off. And I was just thinking, come up to these corners and it's kind of exciting, like, oh, what's around the next corner? Again, we can see that other tunnel that we saw earlier. That one's wide open. But I would think we would be getting back on the tracks here fairly soon. It
looks like this bypass still goes. That's crazy. I mean, it's hard to believe that tunnel cuts all the way through, but looks like it does. So we'll continue on. Still on the bypass trail. Probably feels like it's longer than it is based on this video, but again, 3/4, maybe a mile at most. We can see the tracks again, but I don't know how much further it goes around this next corner. I'll feel like I'm making time again once we get back on the tracks versus doing a big bypass like this. Had to stop and change out my GoPro battery, so we're just about 2 hours in, and based on the footage I've taken so far, I've already burned through one battery, and I've gone through 1 liter of water at this point, so 2 hours in, and I brought 3 liters, so I definitely have to watch water consumption throughout this hike. That's definitely a creepy looking tunnel. Onward and forward. So tunnel number 4, marked number 9. You can see the ridge line of the bypass trail that we did. It looks a lot longer than it was. Get to this one. May need to use a lamp on the next one. Yeah, there's all kinds of challenges with this. If you've got any fears, whether it's creepy tunnels or fear of heights or any sort of claustrophobia. Fortunately, these tunnels, when they're open like this, you don't feel that, but I'm sure there's, I think, a couple that are longer that you don't see the exit like we are in this one. This next one coming up could be one. They almost built a bypass trail on that over there as well, maybe when they were doing the work. All right, we're gonna put the GoPro down and go through this one. It might be a little bit longer. So this tunnel is definitely a longer one. You can barely see the light on the exit up there. And definitely bring a headlamp. I've got 2 headlamps. Headlamp or a flashlight. I felt like just the headlamps were easiest because they were pretty lightweight, lighter than most of the more powerful flashlights that I have. It was all about kind of figuring out what is the lightest setup I could do with this backpack, and it still is heavy, but most of that's water. So as the day goes on here, water and some snacks should lighten up. So this is tunnel number 6. Like I said earlier, I think we had two tunnels, and I think that's it. There's 2 tunnels that are blocked off that you have to go around, but this is number 6. I honestly don't know how many tunnels there are. We are 2 hours and 15 minutes into this hike. So I don't know, mileage wise, how far we've gone. I feel like we've covered some good ground. We haven't taken any real extended break. It's all been just short little breaks. And this one we can see right through. definitely picked up. It looked like looking at the weather a little bit ago. So closer to maybe 17, 18 mile an hour winds. And I think after 11 it's supposed to kind of taper off some. So I don't think it'll be anything to worry about. Skies are still blue. I don't know if you can see that, but that's kind of encouraging that the Goat Canyon Trestle Bridge, my location, all fit on the screen of an iPhone without me having to pinch it down. So, fortunately I can't do directions, but you know, the GPS in these phones, I think, is still picking up my location. So hopefully we don't have that much further to go. I don't know if that's a mile or 2 miles. I don't know what it is. There's only one thing that makes me really nervous out here. Not weather, it's not, we're out here on a perfect day. It is all these rock formations that line, especially when you get into areas where it's on both sides. And I don't know how prevalent mountain lions are out here, but if you were to ever get attacked or ambushed by one of those things, you'd never see them coming in this hillside. They blend right in. I mean, if you're lucky enough to catch them moving the corner of your eye, but that is the one thing that makes me nervous out here. One review, they said they saw mountain lion tracks. How accurate that is, I don't know. I haven't seen any big poops from the animals. All been small stuff. Maybe coyotes are smaller. So you just never know, right? And this morning I was a little more nervous about it than I am now. I don't think they'll be as prevalent as the day goes on until you get out into the dusk hours, which I better be back in camp by then. So, all right, another tunnel here. Tunnel number 7.
So, are there mountain lions out here? Well, it's not out of the realm of possibility. The Anza Borrego State Park website lists them as part of the wildlife, along with mule deer and bighorn sheep, both of which the mountain lion has been known to use as a food source. I have to say, after being out here almost the entire day, it was a little over 8 hours of time hiking in and hiking back out and spending time at the bridge. I saw virtually no wildlife, but certainly waste remnants from smaller to mid-sized animals like coyotes. And there's other websites out there that show the habitat typical for the mountain lion, leading kind of right up to this area itself. So it's always possible, and while it's very rare to ever encounter them, it's always a good idea to keep your guard up and just be aware of your surroundings at all times.
So tunnel 9, good Lord, I'm losing count. I really am. I'll fix it in the video if I'm wrong, but I'm just glad we don't have to go around this darn thing. You can see the ridge. They clearly used that back in the day, probably when they were doing the construction and building these things. Certainly wouldn't want to do that. But my guess is this tunnel is a longer tunnel than what we've done this far. Oh, can see the light. There it is. Definitely a longer tunnel, but straight through. I don't know if that's coming up on the camera or not. You can see the dot of light down there. Definitely the longest tunnel we've had yet. Yep. Dirt bikes coming through here. They're certainly not coming in the direction I came in. There's a southern route, which is what we're on, and there's a northern route out by, I want to say Dos Cabrios area, out coming in from the Ocotillo Well side. And you can, if you've got four-wheel drive to an area that has a parking lot, a bit of just a parking area, and hike in from there. And I think guys with dirt bikes, these look like some mountain bike paths, but some of these other ones over here, like that one, looks more like a dirt bike. You can definitely see where a rock has fallen in here off the sides, which that's a little unnerving. But yeah, there's a northern route and a southern route. And southern route, which is what we did, is further. But I think you see more with the abandoned rail cars. And if you don't have four-wheel drive and can't get out to the northern route kind of staging area or parking area, then the southern route's a better option. And I didn't have a clear idea what the southern route, or excuse me, the northern route path was, how many tunnels you went through, how many were closed off, how many had to go around. There wasn't a lot of information about that from people, but I'm guessing if guys can get their dirt bikes back here, then it must be fairly easy to traverse coming from that direction. And again, I think it is much shorter. Much shorter than the southern route. But hey, we got all day. I don't know how much of this is coming up on the camera, but maybe it's just me walking and talking in the dark.
Yeah, this tunnel was definitely on the creepier side of things because it was so long. And while you can see light at the other end, it's very deceiving as to how far this tunnel really is. And the other thing I noticed going through this tunnel was, unlike the other tunnels that were shorter, air would still get through there and flow. This one was became kind of stifling, and the temperatures weren't even that warm outside. They were in, I think, high 70s for the day. So if you're doing this in summertime or out here when the temperatures are in the 90s, pushing 100, just be aware of that. These, while it may be cooler in here, it can be a little stifling as far as no airflow through the tunnel itself. And again, this is definitely where you need a headlamp or flashlights of some sort. You noticed at the beginning of this tunnel, first walking in, it looks like there's plenty of light, but that light disappears very quickly and you're pretty much in the dark within the first 100 feet or so. So definitely bring your flashlights.
So we're just coming out of this tunnel number 9, I think it was. That's by far been the longest tunnel, maybe a quarter mile or so. But it's straight through tunnel, so you can see the entrance, or you can see the exit. Now we have another tunnel up here. I have no idea how long this one is. I don't know if this is blocked off or not. The track's going around it in a different direction. Looks like an older tunnel we're not going to go through. Whew. It's definitely hot in that tunnel. It's long enough that there's no breeze at all blowing in there. Okay, tunnel 9, the long tunnel. You can see all the way out there all the different trestle bridges they've built on this desert line. There's quite a few. Looks like even a rail car over the edge off on the far side over there. This is another tunnel that we're not going through this. I don't know, this may have been initially used and then they ended up going around it. I'm not sure what the story is there, but felt like I heard somebody hammering on something. Based on this, we're pretty close. Maybe up around this next few bends. That was kind of freaky. When I was talking, I felt like I heard the hammering, like you'd almost hear like the hammering of these spikes on the track here. And there's about like two or three kind of dings, like a sledgehammer hitting them. It's weird. I'll have to check out the video, see if it picked any of that up, because I don't know, maybe it got ghosts in that closed off tunnel there. Maybe that's why it's closed off. Freaky.
As I was shooting video and speaking, I was pretty sure I heard the hammering of spikes or a very similar sound. I'm now 3 hours into this hike. I haven't seen a soul since I left, and about 8 miles in from my starting point. So there is nobody around out here, and I don't see another person until I'm probably halfway back on my return hike. We'll find the Goat Canyon Bridge is just around the corner here. We'll see it in a moment. I later learned this tunnel to the right is Tunnel 15, which collapsed in 1932. We'll see the other side of it here in a moment when we get out to the bridge. But the Goat Canyon Bridge was built because of this tunnel collapsing in an earthquake. The workers would take breaks in what was left of this tunnel while they constructed the Goat Canyon Trestle Bridge. They called it the mud shed. Whether anyone died in this tunnel during its original construction or later, I don't know, but it's pretty odd. I heard these sounds just as I was approaching this tunnel. My GoPro didn't pick up the sounds because the wind was blowing pretty hard, and it was very hard for me to kind of isolate the dinging, pinging type noises that I was hearing as I was speaking and shooting video. If you do attempt this hike and come out to the Goat Canyon Trestle Bridge, which I highly recommend that you do if you're considering it, stop at this Tunnel 15 and maybe wait for a little bit. I didn't go inside. It didn't look safe, so I didn't go inside, but I'll be curious if anyone else ever hears the sounds that I heard as I was approaching this tunnel.
I'm definitely ready for a break. We're just shy of 3 hours into this hike, and I was guesstimating that it would take about 3 hours, maybe a little longer, to get here, but we've got to be getting pretty close. Matter of fact, there it is right there. There it is. I thought it might be outside of this tunnel. So you get to tunnel number 10, you're here. Wow. don't know if that felt like 8 miles. I'm tired, don't get me wrong, but maybe the fact that the majority of it was pretty flat. I'm feeling it in my feet, feeling it in my legs, good old hip flexors, but not sure. We're gonna mark a waypoint here and we'll get an accurate measurement on the way back. But wow, I want to go to the right. And it just keeps on going. I mean, this is coming in from the northern route, going across all those bridges. Crazy. Yeah, this is the fear of heights part. If you got a fear of heights, this may not be the thing for you. But it feels pretty sturdy. Man, it is quiet out here. And I'll admit, as I've gotten older, I've developed a fear of heights, and not as much, but more so claustrophobic, which fortunately none of this was triggering any of that. But this is probably isn't more about the heights as it is more just about the sketchiness that this feels like, and you can see through. And this wood is from 1906, I think. So it just, you know, if it's going to give now, after all the people that have been across this in trains, I'd be shocked. But, you know, 200-pound guy coming out here, I would think it would be totally fine. And all that wood down there, a lot of support. But we're going to get the other side here. We're going to grab a bite, relax, take a load off, fly the drone around here, and just take some additional footage, and then start making our way back. I mean, we basically got here in 3 hours flat. We left at 6:45, and it's straight up 9:45 right now. So I'm guessing on the way back, depending on how I feel, it'll go even faster because I won't be stopping to shoot a lot of video along the way. Yeah, I want to lean out on that and get my camera out there. Oh, there's an interesting tunnel. Wonder what the story is behind that one. But I'm not going to lean out there. We're going to let the drone do the dangerous work. Go down here and get some of the footage of the bridge. Which, yeah, I don't feel comfortable launching the drone from here. Alrighty. That looks kind of sketch. I'm gonna go over to this side. We're gonna stay right here. This stuff looks kind of sketchy. So this last section, where it's just wood, that seemed a little sketchy. I tried to stay on the beams here. I didn't walk down this. Some of the stuff just looks more rotted. So we're greeted with some nice graffiti. Kind of cool.
You can really get a good perspective of the overall size and length of the Goat Canyon Trestle Bridge in this shot. I'm standing just to the right of the old Santa Fe hopper car that's been abandoned off to the side tracks here. You'll notice the storage tank located up on the hillside just above me where I'm standing next to the hopper car. This was part of an elaborate fire system that was installed specifically for the Goat Canyon Bridge. It held over 12,000 gallons of water and would feed the water down through to the bridge to the various pipes that ran through the bridge itself. Almost think of it like a massive sprinkler system. And installed specifically in the event of a fire, whether it was caused through lightning strikes and storms or potentially vandalism, which meant they had to have somebody, a watchman, if you will, out here monitoring the bridge around the clock. If you look closely as we're coming up the backside of this bridge, you can actually see some of the pipe. You can see some of the ladders that are woven throughout this trestle portion of the bridge that really would give workers and anybody that needed to do repairs access to the different levels of the bridge itself. You can see all the stuff we hauled in here. Still a few other things in the bag, but the headlamps, my super smart wife told me last night, hey, maybe you should bring an extra pair of socks. I think that was brilliant. I'm gonna change those before we head back. But the GoPro and a bunch of snacks, extra batteries, and just some extra bottles of water with electrolytes in it. So we're gonna sit here and just take a load off. One of the things that I didn't mention I was carrying was my Garmin InReach Mini 2, and it's a satellite communicator that allows me to send and receive messages, get weather updates, send my location to friends, family, whoever I want. And it also has an SOS feature that allows you to, in essence, pop red smoke if you were to ever get into a bad situation, if you were to get hurt or you needed help in these remote locations like where we are. So while it looks like I'm just texting away and sending messages on my phone, I'm actually doing it through the Garmin apps on my phone, which is relaying through the Garmin device, which is attached to my backpack. So there is no cell service out here. You get into this hike about 20 minutes and the cell signals are gone. So just make sure you have some sort of device that you can communicate with others and reach out for help if you need to. Under there. So we're gonna make our way back, and we made it in 3 hours out here, so I'm gonna guess it's gonna take a little bit longer. I'll probably take breaks. My feet and my legs, I'm sure, are gonna start feeling it, and I'm gonna need to just chill a little bit. Some sort of structures that were down there in that valley, like some round concrete pad there, and then some other concrete pads, it looks like. A little online research uncovered this location. This is also covered in the book that I mentioned earlier in the video. This was one of the laborers' camps. It was called Young and Crook's Camp. And it was a series of buildings here where the workers would stay. They would do the hike up and down this hill each day to work on the railway. But there used to be a pretty elaborate, almost village-like setup down here in the gorge where the workers would stay. I think that is the sketchiest bridge out here. Just all the holes in the wood on the side, both sides. I'm glad that's behind me. More victims of Goat Canyon Trestle Bridge hike. Looks like another group going out this morning after I did that yesterday. So yeah, that hike is it's no joke. I think the hardest part was probably the last half of the hike coming back. I think my body was just, I was just worn out. My legs, my feet, everything were pretty tired, especially my butt. Not sure what that was about, but the last hill, this hillside right here,
that just you have to climb right at the very end beyond the first set of abandoned rail cars was just brutal. It wasn't that big of a hill, that's for sure. So things I would recommend if you're doing this hike: definitely get an early start, earlier than what these guys are. I mean, first light. If you want to go before first light, probably even better, but you know, there's stuff to see right as you get over the hill here from where we're standing in DeAnza Springs Resort. So getting a head start, especially if the temperatures are warmer. We hit this at a high of mid-70s yesterday, which the temperatures weren't so bad. It was probably more the afternoon sun that just from 1 o'clock on that just, you know, starts to wear on you when you're just hiking. There's not a ton of shade on this hike. You've got spots in the tunnels along the way and a few other spots here and there that you can find to just kind of, you know, pull off and take a breather. So not a lot of shade. So obviously bring a hat and sunscreen if you use sunscreen. I didn't have any problem with bugs. Some people would have talked about bugs in the reviews, but I didn't have any problem with the bugs. And the early start, I think, is the biggest thing you can do to prevent getting A, dehydrated, B, kind of just worn out by the sun, because pretty much the first leg of the hike out to Goat Canyon Trestle Bridge, the sun had really not come up over some of those hills, and so I wasn't exposed to the sun at all for the most part. When I got to the bridge, I felt like it didn't feel like I'd gone 8 miles, and that's what everybody says the distance is. I don't know 100% what that distance is, but with the two bridges that you have to, the two tunnels that you have to go around, particularly the second one, it definitely adds to the distance. So if you're measuring this straight out, looking on topographic maps or Google Maps, the distance may not be as accurate, because that's probably that second one's probably at least 3/4 or a mile of distance that you have to swing out around. And I think it's probably a series of a couple tunnels, actually, from what I could tell. But obviously a good pair of shoes. You're doing 16 miles, so whatever you feel comfortable with. I didn't have anything special. I had a pair of multi-purpose Asics for working out that I used that were relatively new, that I purchased just for doing workouts, and they were fine. They were fine until probably the very, like I said, the last hour and a half, 2 hours on the way back were rough. My feet were really feeling it big time. My legs were feeling it. As far as bringing water, snacks, I didn't feel like I probably brought more than I needed on the snack side of things. The water, I took 3 liters, so 3 1-liter bottles, and I used pretty much all of that. And I felt like that was the right amount for the conditions that I was hiking in. If it's warmer out, then you may be dealing with bringing more water, and that's certainly a factor to consider, because the water, the weight of just carrying that initially out can start to get heavy. The funny thing was, my backpack, I felt like was going to get lighter as the day went on. It felt like it got heavier. I went through the first 2 liters of water by the time I was heading back from the Trestle Bridge, and I don't know, I think my shoulders, everything were starting to get sore. And so that backpack at the end of this hike, coming over these last couple of hills, the backpack felt like it weighed twice as much as when I left this morning. It was really weird. I did take off a couple thermals that I had and had those wrapped around it, so that kind of added, but just the amount of water that I consumed, I figured it would have been less. So kind of strange. I think just my body was tired and everything was hurting at that point. Definitely bring some headlamps. Headlamps, I think, are probably a better option than flashlight. Lighter weight, and they're more than sufficient enough for those tunnels. The tunnels were darker in the morning because the sun hadn't come up as much, or wasn't as high in the sky, so you really weren't getting sunlight into those tunnels, a few of them. Most of the tunnels, the majority of them, are short enough that you can see right through and see the exit. There are a few that are pretty long, and you certainly want to have some light in there so you can see where you're stepping. There's,
you know, there's always a chance of rattlesnakes or rocks that have fallen, which there was many cases where you're not walking right on the tracks, but to the left or right of the tracks where the kind of the path is that a lot of people walk on. There were areas where rocks had come off the side of the walls in some of those tunnels, which is a little unnerving by itself. So headlamps are definitely something I would consider bringing. I think I mentioned the bugs. I didn't have any problem with bugs. Some people did reviews and said there were bugs, but I never had any issue with bugs anywhere along that hike. And we're out here in late September, so it's a mix of can be hot or cold. Again, it's kind of currently just these last 3-4 days have been in the 70s, and it's going to bump back up to the 90s. I think starting potentially today, I think is going to start getting up into the high 80s and back by the high 90s next week. So this was just like a perfect window for me to come out here and do this hike that I've been wanting to do for so long. Is it worth it? 110%. It's a cool hike. It is just the scenery going through all the different valleys, the Carrizo Gorge area, the abandoned cars, abandoned rail cars are really cool to see. And of course, the various bridges. You go across multiple bridges, but getting to that Goat Canyon Trestle Bridge is definitely the kind of the pinnacle of the hike, and is a great place to stop, take a long break. But absolutely worth the hike. It's, you know, 16 miles is not something most people do on a daily basis, but completely doable. And I'm not a regular hiker. I don't do, just the last time I did a hike, I did a 6-mile hike with my wife, and I was moaning and groaning about that. So I'm a little apprehensive about this one being over 16 miles. So yeah, if you're thinking about doing Goat Canyon Trestle, absolutely do it. It's definitely worth it. And just bring a good camera, just lots of great photo opportunities along the way. It's funny, I was apprehensive about doing this whole thing, as I mentioned a number of times, and I was looking at one of the reviews, and there were 3 guys actually, that had done the hike out here, and they were all sitting here at the end with a picture of them, all of them drinking beer. I don't know if that's a good idea. It's gonna make that hike back. Maybe they did the northern route, it wasn't as bad, I don't know, but drinking a bunch of beer and then having to go walk 8 miles back to your vehicle or wherever you parked, probably not the best idea.